definition of social selling?
Social selling is using the tools that are out there on the internet, and it goes above and beyond the face-to-face. I mean, regardless if you're business to business or business to consumer, I grew up that selling was either A, over the phone, or B, it was face-to-face. And you can kind of pick and choose based on your territory or what your comfort zone was. And I was always a great face-to-face guy until I became so busy I had to be a phone guy. Well, as technology has kind of evolved and has completely changed the way salespeople operate, social selling now allows us to connect and to share content and to cultivate relationships through the net or through social, channels, which was never there in the past. So it just gives us another way to communicate and to also touch prospects and customers that are way outside your geographic area, which in my, when I grew up in the sales world, if I couldn't drive to you, it wasn't going to happen. And that no longer is true.
It's a small world nowadays.
It's a small world.
It is. Obviously in your book too, you've got a lot of statistics that are wrapped behind a lot of, what goes on with social selling. And
we do.
So, I highly recommend. I'll have a link down below for the ebook where you can get a download copy. But it is it's a great read. I loved it. It's a short read, which is good, and
Yep.
It's a great read. And highly recommend that anyone downloads that.
Well, thanks. I mean, our goal was, Chris, that, LinkedIn, big fans of LinkedIn, as you are. I know that you have an awesome book out there as well, and they're clients of ours. And for us, we were going to do a book on social selling because it's something you're going to have to put in your toolkit as a professional salesperson. And for us to avoid it would have been, ridiculous. So we went to them and said, we're going to write a book on how to leverage the tools. Would you like to participate? And they were nice enough to say, oh, great. And so they helped us write that book, and they launched it on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And we've been giving it to our clients because I think, as you know, you've got a group of people who really utilized LinkedIn and its tools, and there's a group of people who are using it as a glorified address book, or they don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. They're afraid not to be on it. They're afraid to be on it. And so we're in this limbo stage with an awful lot of salespeople.
I find a lot of people, one of the reasons why I train on LinkedIn is that a lot of people they don't understand how to use it. And, right. It is such a powerful tool. Yeah. So why should a salesperson care about social selling?
Well, again, I think it's just in today's world, it's a far more effective way for a salesperson to connect and stay connected either with customers or to find new customers. I think the thing that this asset that we're all trying to figure out as salespeople is how to become more effective and more efficient in the time that we have. And as you become more successful, that's a harder challenge because you're juggling all these balls all the time. Mm-hmm. And so you can choose to ignore social selling, and a lot of people have. But I think certainly, depending on the age group, depending on the geography, it's a must. And I think if I were going to say, why would you do it? People that are on social selling, 51% of the time are really more likely to achieve quota. Mm-hmm. So I guess if we were just looking at dollars and cents, why wouldn't you? And if it's proved out, social selling, you can be 80% more productive. And if I can be 80% more productive with the same talk tracks that I have now and the same product level, why wouldn't I do it? It just increases the ability for us to touch an awful lot of people and to educate an awful lot of people. And, technology and the internet, a lot of our prospects are educated long before they actually call us, Chris. Mm-hmm. And in the old days, part of our job as salespeople, or a large part of our job, was to educate the prospect. And that's still true, but they're doing a lot of that self-education now. So if you can figure out, what groups they're participating in and how do I touch them and how do I become a content expert in my field, I think then your credibility within the marketplace, so your prospect marketplace, customer marketplace, increases. And so for me, it's just an opportunity to talk from one to many versus one-on-one. Mm-hmm. Not that social selling doesn't allow you to do that, but I think it does a lot of heavy lifting for you, and the statistics prove it out.
Yeah. I mean, one of the stats that you have in there is sales reps leveraging sales or social selling are typically about 80% more productive. And I've proved that out. One of the last companies I work with, compared to the other reps, I would get 10 times more meetings, 30 times more WebExes. And it was really, and I probably did it in about a quarter of the time, which was, it was incredible. The way that you could leverage that. So Dave, what do you see as the difference between, say, LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has another solution called Sales Navigator? What are some of the key differences there so that salespeople get a better understanding on that?
Well, I think, the main benefits in my opinion is that LinkedIn, of course, has got an awful lot of stuff going on, right? So there's a lot of noise, and that's not a bad thing, but it's a space where you get to share content, you get to collaborate, you're making introductions, all of that stuff. If I really wanted to take my game to the next level as a professional salesperson, how do I leverage all the great stuff that's happening in that LinkedIn tool? And that's where the Sales Navigator takes us. Sales Navigator is really designed for sales forces. It's fed into salesforce.com. It'll get to start to sort, prospects, customers that are in specific territories based on the size, based on who you're looking for. You can start to slice and dice data as you would in a CRM product. You're just using your LinkedIn as the mega database, let's say. And you're also then made aware of what's going on in your space or in your prospect space. So it allows you to have all the behind the scenes algorithms that LinkedIn has from the hundreds of millions of people that are on this tool. It sorts all that stuff out for you and says, here's probably who you should be paying attention to based on the criteria that you've put in. Now, you can do that in your CRM product, but regardless of which one you're using, that has a finite group of people there, whereas LinkedIn, of course, is the world, and it allows you to do that. So it filters out all the noise, I would say, for a professional salesperson. So you can then take your game to the next level. Now, a lot of people don't need that or don't think they want that. But for those who said, LinkedIn in general is awesome. It's great. Yeah. But how do I do X? Or what could I really just live in this tool and really hit my numbers and blow this out? How do I do that? And if it took me 4 hours to navigate through the normal LinkedIn channels, even if you're a premium user, the Sales Navigator really does all the heavy lifting for you. And that's really what it does. It serves up people that you should be talking to immediately and takes all that investigative time that we would spend off the table. That's, in my opinion, that's really what it does.
Does Sandler use it as a tool internally?
We do use it. Our sales group uses it. We have what I think is missing, again, for us, is because we have 265 offices in 31 different countries, and we're not on a single system, we lose some of the benefit, to be honest. And that's really a discussion that we have internally, because each of our offices, way back when, Chris, got to pick which CRM product they're using. And when the LinkedIn and social selling was it's not going away. As a matter of fact, it's our number one prospecting tool, and I'll share that with you in a second. Then we just said, look, we're going to have to systematize on a system-wide CRM, and therefore, in addition to, we need to start using the Navigator as across the board, because what you'll find is that our offices in San Diego may have relationships that we wanted to know about in Boston, but you really wouldn't have known about that to the level that Sales Navigator can do that with you. So all the tribal knowledge within our group, we have 19,000 people going through our course every year. And wouldn't it be nice to know that 20% of their sales force went through Sandler? I wouldn't have known that, but that's what this tool does. So last year we started that migration process for that very reason.
Well, you just mentioned, it's your number one prospecting tool. Apart from that, how else do you guys use it as a tool?
Well, we use it to become relevant in the marketplace. So, we put content on, we blog, we put articles on. LinkedIn loves us because we have such a high following, which is great. So people know us either from being part of our classes, or they learn about us because we're putting relevant content into their groups or into the channel, which LinkedIn manages for us because of the relationship. So that's there. But we also use it to investigate, to do some due diligence. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So we're going on a particular call. This happened very recently. And you know how you're down to the final three dance, right? And so companies have these policies. They say, oh, you're all equal. But in reality, if they didn't have the company policy that says you have to look at three, some of us wouldn't be there. I mean, let's be honest. And so they always have to be, quote unquote, fair and objective, which is okay, except we're all human. And we looked at one of the key decision makers only to find out that they were an active member of a competitive group of ours. And we said, well, wait a minute. I mean, why would anyone want to change? I mean, they're in there, they're authoring articles, their testimonials are there. And so we tested it. No, it's going to be objective. But we decided as an organization to not invest our time and energy in that opportunity, because we should have been focusing somewhere else. Because, when you're coming out cold, if you track, our numbers are much lower than if we were to control the process and or had clients that would like business to be done if they were at a new company. But a blind RFP, as an example, their numbers are low. And salespeople have happy ears, so you get through the process. But once you really look objectively, hey, look, that decision team is already on board with XYZ. We can try, and that's fine. But we made a decision because at our company, no is just as good as a yes. It's the dragging through the mud, spending resources and time in this in-between stage. It's just a frustration and a lot of wasted time and energy. So we backed out. So that's how we use it as well. So we use it to look and to figure out, if I were to be meeting with you in the old days, I would just show up and start the bonding rapport questions. What do we have in common? What's this? What's that? Now I really get to go on LinkedIn and see, what do you follow? What groups are you in? And who are we actually connected with? And then I find out that, which I wouldn't have known, that we're actually connected through two other people. And I can either call those people and ask them, hey, what do you know about Chris? And would you be nice enough to tell Chris a little bit about us? And all this stuff that would probably never happen, that may give me a little more insight into who you are, and to also leverage the fact that we have mutual connections.
Absolutely.
That's how we use it.
I call that the digital referral. It is my number one source of sales opportunities, is just leveraging that referral network that's in there. It's huge. It's massive. It's incredible. And that's one of the things that I really don't understand that people don't grasp about LinkedIn is, the ability to get 2 to 4 times more meetings just by leveraging, and more qualified meetings as well. Right. So that's crazy. So, so Dave, what are some of the main benefits that salespeople see from using LinkedIn?
Well, first of all, I think it's success and productivity. I mean, let's figure out how we measure success as salespeople. We're either hitting our targets or we're not hitting our targets, right? And if that's true, I've got 51% of the people are more likely to hit their quota. I've got 80% more productivity if I'm using that tool. And if I was just a salesperson, and I'm typical where I'm complaining about maybe I don't have the best products, and maybe there's a competitor with different pricing models and all the other stuff that we have to deal with, which is more troubling when your funnel is low. This allows you to have the constant access. So that I think that's a huge benefit. You're 70% more likely to get an appointment if we're on a mutual group. So if you and I are connected at a group, I've got a 70% more chance, if I can get you on the phone, to reference that, and then you'd be more likely to see me, because as much as I'm wrestling with time as a professional salesperson, so are you as a buyer. You've really got to select out who you're talking to. And the old days, just show up and see if you could form a relationship. It offers me to do that now. I think the other thing that it allows us to do in LinkedIn is to learn about our customers and prospects in a way that we may not have been able to do otherwise. So, if I look at let's take a customer first, then I'll talk about a prospect. In a customer, if I did a cast of characters, the map of who my key players are within my customer base, I probably have really great relationships with several, but not everyone. But I really should, right? And I know I should, but I don't have a lot of time. So how do I do that? Or I may be at your company once a month. And so, Chris, I don't get to see you all the time, so I have to make sure that I do know as much as I can about you and what's going on. And LinkedIn allows me to be educated on who you are. Mm-hmm. It also allows me to check on who you are as a prospect. And I think that's really important. So, I always believe a call that starts well tends to end well. Mm-hmm. And if I can, either reference a mutual group, or if I know that we have a mutual connection, then that is a great way for us to start. Because if you respect that individual and I'm connected with that individual, then therefore that bridge of credibility kind of comes over to me as well. So it allows me to see what's important to you, who do we know, what's your background, where did you used to work, because sometimes I know you from the company that I'm calling you from, but you spent 5 years somewhere else, which maybe that was our connection, Yeah. And it also tells me that if you spent 4 or 5 years at a particular role in a previous company, which I know hypothetically is a competitive shop with whatever you sell, well, chances are I should probably talk about that, right, Chris? Because why am I here? If you did business with that company for 5 years at XYZ, why are we here? Why are you inviting us? Is it the policy that you need 3 bids? Were you unhappy? But I would have never known that until I wasted 4 or 5 months of my time, tens of thousands of dollars, for you to say, Dave, listen, we love you. And by the way, you were a close second. I have to tell you, close second, which in sales is first place for losers, right? What is that award? Participation award? And so I'd find that stuff out early on. And I think that's the key. So it really allows me to accelerate my knowledge base. And finally, I think to establish credibility, because, I could be writing articles or contributing in some way, shape, or fashion in the blogs. And so people get to know the name, and I'm creating a brand within a prospect base. And I think those are some of the key things that allows me to do outside of, which we'll talk about, is really a prospecting tool. And that's our number one prospecting tool within Sandler as well. But really outside of that, those are some of the other side benefits.
It's, you hit the nail on the head. It's great. The productivity gains you get from leveraging it and seeing, where they've been, what they're at, even look at their activity feed to see what's important to them is huge, right?
Huge.
So, it's almost like a whole psychology of someone in one page on LinkedIn. Yep. So, what would be some of the recommendations you make for a salesperson who's just getting onto LinkedIn? What are some of the things that they should be looking at doing?
Well, I think if I'm first getting onto LinkedIn, some of the basic stuff is make sure you get a picture on that profile, right? I'm still amazed when I have faceless people on LinkedIn. Like, how is that possible? I think you should be north of the 500, which means that, you shouldn't connect to everyone, but at the same time, 5 connections probably is not acceptable, right? If you're going to be in, let's be in. That's important. I think also you want to make sure that you have a great 30-second commercial. And what I mean by that is when you're talking about your profile and you say, our company started in 1912 and then we moved down the street in 1914 and then we won this award in 1916 and we did all that stuff. That's awesome. Yeah. And you guys should have company parties about celebrating all that stuff. The prospector customers don't care about that. They want to know, what do you do? What problems do you solve? And the types of people that you help. And if you can create a 30-second commercial which focuses on the buyers, not necessarily yourself, you'll do 2 things. One, you'll separate yourself from all the other people who are just touting themselves. The me, salesperson. But the other thing it does is it allows that prospect to say, wow, that's me. They're talking about problems that I have. And all of a sudden you create that I'd like to talk to you, right? And you create the curiosity and you create the level of expertise. When I go to a doctor, and same as you, they don't start off by saying, hey, Dave, thanks for coming in today. Before we talk about your heart, I'd like to show you all my degrees and where our office is. They don't say that. They ask a ton of questions. And when they ask good questions and they tell me about problems that they solve, they are building credibility a lot faster. So I think that's important. I think the other thing is important is that you should have some time goals. And what I mean by that is, I think 30 minutes a day, if you're not using it like you did with it, just hates your number one prospecting tool, because that's an anomaly based on most people. Most people don't know what to do with it. So you're a ninja, you know what to do with it. But if I'm there and it's part of my overall plan, it's not my plan, then I think you should have a time block. And what I mean by that is maybe 30 minutes a day, maybe it's 45, but pick something that works for you. I don't think you should be camping out 8 hours a day on it and letting all the other things in your business go to a side, because this is the golden bullet that's going to save your year. At the same time, you do need to spend time, consistently on the tool if you're going to leverage the tool. Showing up once every 6 months isn't really going to do anything. You don't water your garden every 6 months and expect it to have fruit. So it just doesn't work.
A couple of things, Dave, that I'd make comment on this is that one of the things you brought up was the profile pictures. Is one of the stats I've seen, I'm sure you've seen this too, is 50% of B2B buyers, and this comes straight from LinkedIn, 50% of B2B buyers go to LinkedIn to try to find, a vendor, for lack of a better word, and 50% of them avoid you if you don't even have a profile picture. So, I mean, you're just discounting yourself on 50% of the potential opportunities that walk in the door just on that. The other thing I'd say, Dave, is your analogy to the healthcare system. Apparently, you haven't been in healthcare in Canada. They actually just show the degrees, and, it's, anyways, we won't go there.
Funny.
How do you, one of the things that I get asked all the time is, how do I generate sales leads from LinkedIn? What do you guys see as an organization? How do you guys derive opportunities through LinkedIn?
Okay, so two ways. Let me give you the first way, and then I'll give you the magic bullet for us. One is that I go to groups that I know my prospects should be in. Mm-hmm. Like where would they camp out? Where would they participate in? And that then helps me identify who's there and start to hone down, these are potential people that I should be talking to. I didn't know who they were yesterday, but if they're in that group, for instance, increasing sales managers' productivity, let's assume that's a group. Chances are, as a Sandler trainer, I want to be there, right? Mm-hmm. I want to see who's in there, what's going on, things of that nature.
Yes.
Here's our bullet. We actually will go into, let's say, our customer base, right? And so, Chris, you're a raving fan of Sandler, and you've been a client of mine under this scenario now for a couple of years. And I've asked you for maybe 2 years, Chris, anyone else that could use Sandler training? Oh, Dave, you're awesome. No one comes to mind, but if anyone does, I certainly will give you a call. I feel good about asking. You feel good about responding. Nothing has happened. And what I do know about referrals, you have to actively go get them. There is no correlation from the amount of good work that you do to the amount of referrals people give you, mm-hmm. right? So you just can't say, I worked hard this week, so I bet you 10 referrals come in. I'm going to sit back and just wait for this to happen. It shall not happen. So if you wanted to take control, here's what I would do. I go into your contacts, right? And I say, and then I sort them. And I say, well, Chris knows 10 CEOs. And then I have the CEOs. I say, well, who actually would be like my target here? And now, instead of saying, who else besides yourself, Chris, do you know? Now, here's what I do is I say, I send you a quick in-mail, right? Because you'll respond to that a lot faster than Outlook, or I'll call you depending on my style. Yep. But it'll sound something like this. Chris, I noticed that you're connected with Mary Smith. How well do you know her? And would you be, comfortable introducing me to Mary, knowing what Sandler does and all the things that we've done together? I've actually included a quick introduction letter for your convenience and for you to edit. Feel free. If you feel comfortable, would you mind sending it along? And it's a little longer than that, but that's the general gist. Mm-hmm. And 75% of the time, you send the letter as is. I get about a 4% of the time where I don't hear from you. Then I have to question, well, either you're traveling or my relationship with you isn't so great. So that's a good piece of information I got to go get. But when you forward that letter to Mary Smith, hey, Mary, I'm not sure whether, you need Dave's products and services. Let me tell you a little bit about what Dave's done for me, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's worth a quick call. You've actually sent that letter to Mary and CC'd me. when Mary responds, which she always will to you, she goes, "Thanks, Chris. I haven't heard of Sandler, but certainly would be willing to invest a couple minutes." When she hits reply, I've got all of her information now, right? I've got her phone numbers on the bottom of her signature. I've got her email. And now it starts. Now I'm going to call Mary directly. And so we used to have about 10 prospecting tools that we used. That is by far the most popular, most effective for us, because if you have raving fans, psychologically what you're doing is you're picking the people that you want to talk to. I'm not relying on Chris to think about who in my mental database should I be calling on. I've selected those people for you. I don't give you a list of 25 people. I'm going to pick one or two at a time, which is manageable for you. And then I give you an update of where I am in the process with them. So, people like to know what's happening. Now you're educated. And then when I'm done, I thank you for it. And I go back in and ask for another one or two. Now, some people, they do the laundry list of 25, and that can work. But that's how we do it. That's how we teach our clients to do it. And you'd be shocked about how much additional business that they get from their client base. Now, it doesn't just have to be from clients. You know that, Chris. If you and I have a relationship because we're in the same networking group, I could go and look at your connections as well and say, okay, well, who should I be talking to? But I think when you do the heavy lifting for the person you're asking the referral from, it makes it much, much easier. I don't know if you found the same thing.
Absolutely. You know what that is? You just nailed my number one prospecting tool, right? You create it, the letter for them, path of least resistance. They'll take it, copy it, put it in, send it out. The other thing that is absolutely, it just baffles me, and I give a monthly webinar on LinkedIn and leveraging it, and I always talk to people about this. I can only think of probably 2 times in the last year that someone has actually asked me to make an introduction for them.
I know.
And why I say that is because I have almost 3,000 connections on LinkedIn. And it just absolutely baffles me that no one uses this tool and leverages it. And I think that is right there the number one reason that I love LinkedIn is because I get to see your network and I can get through the door so much faster.
Yeah.
So Dave, I know I got a cognizance of your time. We're about a half an hour into it. Last 2 questions, I'm not too worried about or anything like that. One thing I am going to ask you is, is there anything that I may not have touched on that you want to convey to people? How do people get a hold of you guys? Anything like that?
Sure. I mean, if you want the Sandler LinkedIn material, or if you'd like to even attend a Sandler program as my guest, just for being part of, Chris's network, please just go to Sandler.com and find a training center. Call them up, whether it's in sales management, sales, which is our swing zone. If you want to improve your productivity in those 2 areas, just call and say, hey, look, you'll see the calendars on the net. Just pick a topic that's important to you, and just say, I heard Dave with Chris, and I'd like to just sit in, be my guest, and participate. I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to leave with 10 good ideas that you could implement tomorrow. And so that can't hurt you, right? So I would say, hey, please be my guest to do that. Or we have a ton of white papers on our website. But really, we have 2 distinct marketplaces. We help entrepreneurial companies that really don't have a huge training department, and we'll go in and play trainer, coach, and manager. And then we've got the other side of the spectrum, which are the Fortune 1000, where we could really go in with that organization, and whether they have a sales process, because we have our own, for the companies that don't have it, they can adopt ours, or we change our process to match what they're doing so they can become more effective in what they do. So that's really what we do, and we've been doing it for almost 50 years.